I will present a case study, and I would like to thank Professor Borisov for his introduction to nanoelectronics. So nanoelectronics, as most of you know, is started with a basic discovery at the Bell Labs, so industrial research, because the Bell Labs have been put together by Etienne and Western Electric Company, so industrial context. It was discovered that there is amplification when two pieces of metal touch germanium, and that is their lab rebuilt experiment. By the way, the inventors, the discoverers of transistors became Nobel Prize as well in 1956. And if we count the Nobel Prize inventions that fuel this industry, I believe it's maybe just in the medical sciences or pharmaceutical that there is a similar example of how many breakthrough discoveries or in science ended up being used in this industry. Indeed, in Europe, about the same time, there are similar activities, still in an American company, Westinghouse in France. Matare and Welker built transistors back in '48. Matare went on founding Intermetal, a company that survived till a few years ago. And he also was the first one who exhibited at the International Radio Exhibition in Düsseldorf in 1953, the first transistorized pocket radio. It was the time ripe for inventions. You see these kind of things popping up all around the world in almost all countries, very, very active research and activities. And of course, the birth of the micro and nanoelectronics is with the invention of the integrated circuit in 1958, Nobel Prize, as Professor said before, just for Kilby, because Noyce passed away before that has been recognized. Based on all this invention, Silicon Valley happened. A few years after the discovery of the transistors, more than 70 startups company popped up in the Silicon Valley area, so around the San Francisco Bay, and the industry thrives on an unparalleled innovation. As a matter of fact, current estimation indicate that every year mankind manufactures more transistors than grains of sands in all beaches of the world. It is by far the most manufactured artifact in the history of the mankind. Electronics in the Soviet Union, because we cannot speak about what happened in Romania without putting as a beginning what happened in the dominant power in the area, which was the Soviet Union. And as you may remember or may know, the transformation of the society towards socialism was based on the proletariat. So it was the advanced class, social class that was bringing by the novel technologies. Lenin had, however, a small problem right after the First World War. That was that Russia was lacking proletariat. So he didn't mind that. He said, we are going to create it. We are going to invest in industry, create an industry, investing in the first line, in the heavy industry and machine building industry. Strangely enough, a particular attention has been given to an industry that was not creating a lot of jobs and a lot of proletariat, which was the electronics. And the reason may be found in this statement in early 1917, 1918 by Lenin himself, who said that every village should have a radio, and everywhere in the whole country, people should know that at a given point in time, they will have news about what happens in the politics of the country so that everybody can participate actively. And that created, if you want, a parallel development path to the heavy industry and the machine building industry. Now, if we look at what happened, a few milestones in the Soviet Union, in 1917, already the victory of the Soviet Revolution has been spread around in the country and abroad by telegraph. In 1921, voice broadcast started based upon that observation of Lenin. 1922, Moscow had world's most powerful broadcasting station in the world. 1925, the first shortwave broadcast happened, again the first time in the Soviet Union. In 1931, Russia introduced mechanical TV and a few years later electronic television. And after the World War, the research in this area continued strongly. And Russia, actually, the Russian specialists developed the 625 lines, 50 hertz standard for television that became an international standard. What happened in Romania? Between the two wars, there have been incipient electronic industry. So 3 companies are registered in 1929. One of them is manufacturing this beautiful radio, 1936, radio receivers based on imported components. Then the Second World War happened. The Iron Curtain fell on Europe. Romania was on the wrong side, if you allow me to have a judgment of value on that one. And in 1948, Romania received a new constitution. All companies have been nationalized. June 48, the principal ones, and then slowly but surely every other one. But at the same time, in the wake of the same conception about the importance of electronics, Radio Popular, the first electronic company, has been funded by the Romanian government, state-owned, by merging, putting together all activities of countries in one company. And they started right away manufacturing a radio receiver based on Soviet designs and based on Soviet piece parts imported from the Soviet Union. After that, the development of the country followed the Stalinist planned economy mantra, even after Stalin was not there anymore, but the economy continued the same way. I'm going to go quickly over that. There are 8 5-year plans in 1989 when the communists fall. I put in red the initiatives that happened related to the electronic components, which are actually the nanoelectronic industry, microelectronic at the epoch. So they started by building a factory in 1962, research institutes, a second factory in 1981. So if we go over that, they started building microprocessors, 80 microprocessors. By 1989, Romania had a full ecosystem in electronics, having full-fledged capabilities. On the right-hand side is a catalog that was published in the epoch of the existing companies in the field. If we look at that, the value chain was basically covered by the companies listed here. There are component manufacturers, electronic equipment manufacturers, radio receivers, TV sets, computers, industrial automation. There are service provider companies. There are institutional and academic research with micro production facilities. There were sufficient supply of qualified human resources. There were 5 university centers that had curriculum in electronics, undergraduate and vocational studies. Just as an example, the campus associated to the company Electronica had 4,000 students that were admitted by competition with a success rate of 12 to 30%, depending on specialty and so forth. So a lot of competition, a lot of workforce, a lot of competence, as a matter of fact. It is difficult to estimate, as a matter of fact, how the industry performed. If we look at that, Romanian industry was rather isolated. The goal, the primary purpose, was to satisfy from internal manufacturing the needs of the whole economy. But that is per se not necessarily the most economically effective approach. And going after that, external trade was a state monopoly, so companies could not import, could not export, just the state could. People circulation was severely limited, a high defection risk. Everybody who got across the Iron Curtain has a high probability not to come back anymore, like a diet, if you allow me that example. But it had a few rather modern features. Under the economical pressure, they put together research and manufacturing in lab-fab environment. That's how the industry operates today, under the pressure of the high capital needs. They also anticipated the open innovation type of activities that become very fashionable today, in which university professors work closely together with engineers in the companies. And at the same time, we have a focus on consumer products in the Romanian planification, planned economy. That may be a feature, a specificity of the country. It's difficult to estimate how they're doing in economical terms. Imagine that it's an industry operating in a planned economy with a non-convertible currency. So nobody had an idea what the actual economic value of a product was. Sales volume, profitability, concepts like return on investments were unknown and were not used. Reporting parameters were actually made basically on propaganda reasons. The government had to show growth, had to show that things are happening, things are done, capabilities. It was not considered interesting to talk about how economic they are. Quantitative goals, as I said, prevail over qualitative, except for export, where now some competition kicks in some reality checks. The state is the only and one entrepreneur in the whole country. They are, of course, pursuing rather political and economic purposes. Manufacturing volumes of every single company in the country are decided by a central committee of the plant. Prices, selling prices for products are decided by the committee on prices for every single product in the whole country, in the whole economy. Labor cost is established by government decision, how much they have to be paid, the labor force has to be paid. Capital investments, starting or merging companies, decisions of the Ministers, Council of Ministers. So the state owns all IP. They still submitted the patents, but you wonder why? Who are they protecting against if there is only one owner of the whole IP? However, there is anecdotal evidence of performance. For example, some of these products, and they have been radio sets, TV receivers, also computers, based on MSI or TTL devices initially, then on processors, have been built and exported, first in COMECON countries, but also in Western countries. Books, articles, contributions to the conferences, international peer-reviewed contributions appeared in big numbers. Brilliant careers by Romanian diaspora. The National Nanoelectronics Initiative in the United States, the initiator and the heart, the brain and the soul of that initiative is Mihail Rocco, a Romanian born and educated scientist, correspondent members today of the Romanian Academy. If we list a few of the personalities, we find them at the world-leading universities. Actually, is anecdotal evidence that the education was not bad. People coming through the system were competent. And also an anecdotal evidence on the recognition. For example, Romania started in 1978 a first conference on semiconductors that showed there was enough production and enough innovation in the country to have enough contribution to make a conference out of that. That conference continued, survived. After 98, thrived. It arrives at a 41st edition this year. And it may be interesting to mention that this is one of the only 4 conferences sponsored by IEEE, which is the most important industrial association worldwide, in Europe. So IEEE only sponsors 4 conferences in Europe. This in Romania is one of them. So another sign that the work that has been done enjoys some recognition. What happened in 1989? Here we see actually the distance between competence and competitiveness. So we can make a case and say in the country there are some competencies that have been built. How did they perform in the world? Very poorly. As a matter of fact, the fall of the communist regime strongly perturbed the Romanian nanoelectronics industry, the Romanian economy altogether, the life of the Romanian people. That was a big commotion, and not only Romania, actually, the whole Eastern Bloc. The unsuccessful privatization that was done in a hurry right after 1989 amounted to a real collapse of the semiconductor industry in Romania, of the whole electronics industry, almost all industry. Romanian microelectronics, as a matter of fact, did not have a chance to compete successfully on the world market. There are a few elements that were structural and they could not be overcome. For example, it was focused on the internal consumption. That was too small to reach economy of scale. And it was imposed to build a product because somebody in the country had a need for that, irrespective of the economicity of building it. The investments required in modern facilities. Remember that today, a real manufacturing fab for semiconductors is in the range of $10 billion. Such investments could not be sustained by the situation of the Romanian economy at that point in time. Romanian authorities, but not only the Romanian authorities, also the European one in other countries, do not really perceive this industry as a high priority. I would say maybe Lenin saw clearly the importance better than contemporary leaders. Few electronic companies survived. Romania rescued a competence in institutional research. They have a research institute that put together several researchers that actually continues to function, enjoyed support both nationally and European, and established successful international collaborations, and has built some kind of a reputation already. But also foreign investors came to the countries. Some of the big companies in microelectronics, like Infineon, NXP, Bosch, Honeywell, Flex, Silicon, and so forth, they employ together today about 17,000 employees. The estimation in 1989 was between about 15 and 20,000 employees. So basically, the Romanian employment in this industry came back to where it used to be 30 years ago. Perspectives. We can make a very quick estimation in a SWOT type analysis. Now, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Romania still has a good theoretical competence, supported by institutional research and supported by a still functional educational system, has talent that we have demonstrated by examples, has still a lower cost, considerably lower than the average of the European Union and many other developed countries in the world, and has a high-quality diaspora. I gave a few examples, which stays in touch with the country. So, interestingly enough, those who expatriate themselves and made a brilliant career still have links to what happens in the country. The weakness is obviously is that the economy of scale was missing, that the investments fall behind the state of the art, and there's a lot of competence lost through immigration. Romania is behind Syria, the second largest immigration in the world. 17% of the workforce is expected to be actually working abroad as of today. So, among the opportunities, foreign investors can be encouraged to continue coming to the country through real government policies. Romania built a reputation of software. They are quite an effervescent scene in developing countries. They say that at Microsoft in Seattle, the second more frequently spoken language after, of course, English is Romanian. A lot of expats going there. Duplicating the success in automotive industry. Some of you may be aware of the success Renault had with the Dacia model built in Romania. They demonstrated that you can do industrial activities with enough management and enough focus almost everywhere in the world, so why not in Romania? And then, of course, an opportunity is to reverse the migration flow, to bring back the diaspora and involve them in rebuilding the industry. Threats. Investments are based exclusively on low cost of some of the foreign investors are not permanent. They move whenever the price changes. Talent depletion, if the expatriation continues, will also reduce the value and the quality of the high education, because it's difficult to recruit top-notch specialists to build an education system at high level. And one of the biggest one, isn't that the last one? Financial resources available are wasted because they are not allocated to the purpose, but they are diverted because of corruption. So fight against corruption is a real important element in the future development. Now, can the Romanian industry be recovered? Why not? It's not trivial, but not impossible. After all, if we take the leading semiconductor manufacturers of the world, which is Taiwan, they started about 30 years ago from an even much lower starting point than Romania and other countries will have today. So it takes will and it takes the means allocated in order to create a future. Thank you.